Well, we're the Kurtzes. I'm Laren.
I'm Averil.
And we went in 1974 to teach at the secondary school, Institut de Lukanga, the Lukanga Institute, in what was then Zaire. And we were there for 3.5, nearly 4 years, till '77. Averil had been in Senegal as a student missionary and was interested in going back. And I was interested in Third World work as well. And so when I finished my second degree actually, but first one here, I stayed on and got a master's in missions. And then we were introduced to each other and started teaching, she in Toronto initially, and then I was in Broadview Academy west of Chicago. We taught there together for a couple of years after we were married and had put in our names to the GC. They knew that we both spoke French. And so a call came in the middle of the school year. We had to be there yesterday, as they typically do. And so in the middle of the school year, we finished the first semester and left in the spring to go over to Zaire, which is the Congo previously, the Belgian Congo had been, and is once again the Congo. And when we got there, we found that, in fact, they didn't need us right away. But that was good in a way because we were able to take some language study. And we started learning Swahili, which is not the local language, but the market language used for various tribes around there coming from East Africa. And we were on the eastern edge of Zaire. So we had a chance to get started with that, and we were also given a very small cook stove, and maybe you want to give a little bit of a rundown on what that cook stove was like.
Well, it just smoked terribly. We had a gas stove, but it was difficult to get the gas bombs or whatever you call them. So you did all of your cooking on the wood stove, but it didn't matter what I did, and I'd never used one before, but it didn't matter what I did, it smoked terribly. So we said, if you really want us to stay here, you're going to have to get us something that works. So
a number of the other missionaries had stoves that were approximately the size of what you'd find in the kitchen today, but ours was just a very small stove, sat on a couple of wooden pillars. And sometime later, after we had been struggling with this for months, for some reason or another, they decided that they would change it or something. I think they went to change it, yes.
Yeah, they did decide they would buy us a new one, and so they did bring it in, and we're installing it.
And when they took the pipe out of the wall, where it went into the chimney, they found a very large chunk of cement that was there. That's why it was smoky. There was nothing wrong with the stove. It was the problem was with their installation. In the meantime, they had been telling her she didn't know how to make a fire, which, but we managed to get through that. Yeah. So, as I said, they didn't need us to begin with immediately. However,
within 3 months, they did.
They did, and so Averil started teaching English, and I was there supposedly to study to teach Bible. But a number of the missionaries who were there either went permanent return or on furlough at the time, and at the same time, the school level was high school level, and they doubled the class size of those who were in first and second year high school. And at the same time as these missionaries went home. And so the poor students were in the courtyard milling around waiting for their class. And so I was teaching all kinds of different things, as you mentioned a moment ago, wearing different hats. I taught art appreciation, I taught drawing, I taught math for a little while, I taught geography, I taught economics, I taught philosophy in addition to Bible.
Don't forget the chemistry.
So, oh yes, that's right, and organic chemistry. Interestingly enough, the organic chemistry book, here they're like that. Well, they had a little book like this of organic chemistry, and so I had to learn enough about the formulas and the molecular structure to be able to get that across to the students in a way that they could.
So he would prepare
hopefully
one night for the next day's classes.
So our son told me some time ago, you know, Dad, I think your vocabulary in French is larger than mine. And I said, yeah, probably it is, because I had to learn all of this information to be able to teach it, as she said, the next day. So we continued to teach there for a number of years. I understand that the school is now a university.
And new missionaries came in after the ones left when we got there, and we had 3 or 4 new families come in. So we needed them for the big groups of students that we had.
Unfortunately, the director who had been there and he was from Angola, and so he had grown up in Africa and knew the mentality and knew how to work with the people. There were some difficulties that he encountered and had to leave, and those who came in to take his place did the best that they could, but unfortunately the lid was not on, as it would have been helpful to have had. And so over the course of the several years that we were there, and we were there from 74 to 77, the students would have difficulties with something or another, and the unrest and difficulties would always start out in the cafeteria. It always started with them upsetting their food.
And tribal problems are not limited to non-Adventists, unfortunately.
So on one occasion this had taken place and they upset their food, and as it turned out, the mission president from the entire union, the union president, came from Lubumbashi at the headquarters and came up to address the students. He was an older man of the same tribe, ethnic background, as the majority of those students of ours who were in the dormitory, and those students were displaced from their particular home area. Twice displaced, actually, but they were there with basically very little adult supervision. They were on their own, and they could get into some mischief. So he came up and addressed the students in the courtyard, and I can remember him saying, "A hungry man is an angry man," and basically kind of calmed the students down but didn't really solve the problems. And so the next year we had a similar thing that took place, and then I think they went to the director's house, and they were throwing they pulled out his flowers. He loved geraniums and canna lilies and so on, and they were tossing them up in the air.
They broke his living room window.
And so once again, they were settled down, but the problems, the underlying problems, were never taken care of. And so about the third time this happened, it happened in connection this time with a problem of discipline, of unfortunately, again, the same unsupervised group. And the local girls' dean and the cook were from the local area. And they, in a faculty meeting, explained what had taken place and basically said these were the students responsible, and of course it was the other tribe. What had happened was, in the process of getting some of the indigenous folks to work in the school system, they had sent some of them away to get higher education. And so when they brought them back, they were also trying to integrate the housing, because they had smaller houses for the Zaire and the larger houses for the expatriates. But they felt that this was not fair to them to do, and so they were trying to figure out how to bring some of the Africans into the larger houses. And they said they wanted to do it on the basis of education. So this one individual had been sent away, and it was time for him to come back again. The house wasn't ready. The only communication we had with Lubumbashi, with the union headquarters, was by shortwave radio. And that would only work in the morning before the sun would come up, and so they would have communication before 8 o'clock in the morning. Once the sun came up over the hill, there was too much static. Well, the shortwave radio, all of the radios, the students had as well. What they didn't have was a good command of English. And all of this communication, even though the country was French-speaking from its colonial masters, initially the mission group was American and also, well, Belgians were there also, but the medium of exchange was
English.
In English of communication. And so they misunderstood that we were simply trying to wait till the house was ready before this individual could come so he'd have a place to live. Well, they understood that we didn't want him. And they took that as being, we didn't want him because he was a member of their tribe. So in fact, unfortunately, those students had taken this misinformation and gone to one of their heads in the local mission, who was also a member of the tribe, went up there and said, look, we've got to do something. We'll make a big commotion, and then they'll have to send him down here to settle things. And this man, unfortunately, basically said, you know, do what you want to do, and so gave his approval. Now, these largely were pastors' sons, and so they had the authority. They had the blessing to go ahead and do it, and they wanted to kill at least one missionary. And I came home and had just gotten myself a drink, and I told Averil, drink a Possum, by the way.
No electricity, so we had
a
kerosene lamp on the table between us.
And I told her we're going to have difficulty this evening, and I thought it was going to be between tribes.
And barely had he said that,
and
then we heard windows breaking and a lot of noise, and I said, the baby, and we ran down the hall to take, and he said, oh, the baby is fine, and I said, no, I'm going to take her, and we picked her up out of her crib. It was night, she was sleeping, and by then they were in the house.
Yeah, they fortunately, for some reason or another, when they broke the windows in the living room and they pushed the curtains in, the curtains hit the top of the kerosene lamp, knocked the chimney off, didn't break it, but the flame went out.
Or we could have had a fire,
we could have had a fire as well. So we took our daughter and our dog and our cat and went into the bathroom, which was the only room that had small windows that they couldn't get in. When we ran down the hallway to get the baby and went into the bathroom to try to protect ourselves, I decided I wanted to go out and talk to these students. I mean, they were my students. I knew them.
I told him, no, just come in here. And he says, no, I'm going to talk to them. They're my students.
So when I went out to do that, all they said was, on va le battre, we're going to hit him. And they had very long pieces of wood that they used for...
we put in our outdoor fire.
Fire to heat the water, to have hot water. And so they had these long pieces of wood, split wood, and so they came and whacked me on the back, broke my watch, and so on. And well, I decided that they were not up to conversation at that point. So at that point, I went into the bathroom, but that delay was enough that I couldn't latch the door and lock it. So the best I could do was to push it and then ultimately pull that counter in front
and brace
myself against the bathtub behind me and the door ahead of me while they were attempting to beat it down, push against it.
Poking their machetes in and saying, we're going to kill all of you, we're going to kill all of you.
So I don't know what it was that you managed to get a hold of when they came in with their hand with a machete. She managed to whack a couple of them on the wrist with something or another.
Maybe baby powder. That's where I used to change the baby.
The can of baby powder. Why they actually didn't cut the door down, I don't know. Whether they were just trying to scare us or whatever.
They didn't have time, because in just a few minutes there was silence and they ran away, and I said, it's finished, and Laren said, no, we'd better wait. And then the lights came on, and they have a very keen sense of hearing, and they had heard the generator starting, and so they knew, okay, the lights are coming on, they're going to know who it is. Of course, I recognized their voices. I had taught them. So they left. We waited a few minutes because we he said, maybe it's an ambush. But we did go out, and he grabbed the keys to the car so we could leave, but he got out there, and before I got out, he said, no, we can't go anywhere. They had broken the windshield and the side window. So we were stuck and standing there trying to figure out what should we do when another teacher, two teachers actually came down. Are you okay? Are you okay? Then we realized it wasn't just us. They had planned this for everyone on campus. And
they had made quite a very good planned attack. They had blocked off the road, and now the road, mind you, was just a dirt road. But it was the main thoroughfare north to the south in that part of Zaire, with its attendant, not just potholes, but mud holes and sinkholes that they had to dig their way out of and so on. In any case, the road there, they had blocked off the access to the north as well as to the south. And then they had 3 different groups to attack 3 of the missionary homes at the same time, planning to kill at least 1 missionary if they could. And then they were going to go and attack the other homes. One of the first 3 that had been attacked at the same time, the one gentleman who was business manager there, Jean-Luc Lezeau, he's currently in stewardship in the General Conference. He was able to get out a back door and get one of these long pieces of wood, and he said, "I'm coming to beat you, my friends." And he went after him like that, and they turned tail and ran because they weren't up to a fight.
But he got hit.
But he got hit as well
because the 2 of them had to go to the hospital the next day.
Make sure there were no broken bones, which fortunately there were not.
And the 3rd one that was attacked at the same time had just received his stuff, his shipment of goods, and he got 2 tire irons and banged them together, and when they saw that, they took off. So it was kind of comical later on, but at the time, I remember our baby Camille she did not even utter a sound, not anything, but she was as stiff as a piece of wood. And so when when we all got together, they tried to take her from me. I couldn't open my arms, and she still wasn't crying. She was just like a board. It took quite a while for us to be able to calm down.
She had just started sleeping through the night,
oh, yeah.
And after that took place, it was
a couple of years until she slept through the night, and I had to sit with her. We didn't have counseling and all of those things, especially not there. Over here now, I'm sure there would have been something, but all that I knew to do was just sit and hold her hand for 2-3 hours every night until she fell into such a deep sleep that she was asleep. Otherwise, the slightest noise would wake her up and she would start screaming.
As soon as you start to leave and you think she was asleep, a click of the door or whatever, she'd just wake up and start screaming again. So you have to go back and hold her until she got very, very...
We did our own counseling.
Yeah.
We had to.
Yeah, so it was not a fun time.
No, it wasn't, but God protected us.
The next morning, the place was in shambles, and the houses all over the place had broken windows and so on, and so we managed to get in touch then with the union headquarters, and the treasurer there, when he heard this information, and we were all in the house of the principal at the time. And the individual who had spoken to him said, well, the question came in was, did you take an action to close school? Well, we hadn't taken an action. There was no school to be had, but we hadn't taken a formal action. And so I said, well, if you haven't taken an action to close school, how can you close school? Well, that was very demoralizing. And so we took the action, but we couldn't understand what in the world they had in mind. Well, of course, down there they didn't have any idea of what the scope of the problem was.
They didn't know the magnitude of what had happened. No.
So the students it was found out who were the main ringleaders of it and who all was involved. So we called the local authorities, and they took them down to what they called the zone, to the headquarters there, and they had a place that they could confine them, and they did. But then, because it was not considered a crime, it was considered a politically motivated event, the school had to take food down to them every day. And one of the consequences that was supposed to take place was, after having rioted that way, that they would lose the opportunity for them to sit for their government exams. And that was very, very difficult if they didn't have that opportunity to do so. But that was the action that we did, in fact, take, and it was an action that was basically blessed by the union as well, that they should not be able to sit under the auspices of our school, having rioted against it, for the government exam. But unfortunately, one of the expatriate teachers worked it out in such a way that they were able to sit for their government exam. So they basically had no punishment whatsoever. Nothing happened.
However, we did get a message from one of the students rather, that the story wasn't over and they were still going to come after someone, and probably it would be the Kurtzes. And so every evening we would pack up our stuff for the night and take our dog, cat, and baby and go down to the Catholic mission and just down the road, and they gave us refuge every night for a month until we felt things had blown over. The people there were just really wonderful to us.
Very, very kind. In fact, our daughter was born at a Catholic hospital there. The woman who was the doctor was a Spanish nun, and she had specialties in general surgery, obstetrics, and gynecology. And she told some very interesting stories of what she had been able to do to save the lives of these people. In fact, my wife's life as well in the process. She had had a problem. And so we had very excellent medical care when we were there also. So we have some very good memories. In fact, the local tribe that was just across the road that came in, started the generator and so on, came back with a bunch of men because the individual who was responsible for the generator was threatened by the students at the time. So he went back to his home, told the other men in the village what was going on. They came across as men and basically saved our lives. One of the individuals from that local area who was studying there, because of the rebel situation, the problems, ended up as a delegate to the General Conference in Toronto in 2000. But the plane that he was on had to go to Kinshasa. Well, just prior to that, one of the Catholic bishops had gone from that area of eastern Congo by this time to Kinshasa and come back to try to get some support against the rebels who held the area. They found out about it and they killed him. And so our delegate, our man, when his plane, for entirely different reasons, went to Kinshasa, I don't think he even got off the plane, but they would have known that he went to Kinshasa. He was afraid for his life. He had to declare refugee status in Canada, and then later on his wife and family were able to come. Her folks had been on an interim basis pastoring in the Ontario St. Catharines area, and got to talking about where they were from and so on. Turned out they were individuals that we had known there. In fact, we had taken them to the hospital for the birth of their first child.
And we just attended the last child's wedding a week ago in Canada.
So it was a very, very nice and beautiful family, just wonderful people. Yeah. And really nice to get back reacquainted with them again. So that's that story.